Hi everyone, this is Jim. We're continuing to look at my games from the 2015 US Open. We're on to Game 5 now. This was a pretty decent game for me. I was facing a higher rated opponent. He had a rating of 21-24, and afterwards he complimented me on the game, said I played a really good game. So let's take a look at it. First I wanted to mention, it's kind of interesting that in round 3, last time I faced a higher rated opponent, she was only rated 2066, and here we are in round 5, and I'm facing someone even higher rated at 21-24. So what's going on with that? Normally in a Swiss system tournament, as the tournament goes on, people get sorted into the different score groups, and you're paired up against someone who's more evenly matched against you as time goes by. But in the US Open, which is a large open tournament all in one section, it's so large that actually something else happens. And so one way to think about it is it's just the sheer number of players in each score group causes these rating disparities. So, for example, there were 500 people roughly playing in this, and even after 8 rounds, there would still only be 17 score groups, right? The score groups are 0, 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2, etc., up to after 8 rounds, the top score would be 8. So 0 to 8, with all the half points in between. There's a total of 17 different score groups after 8 rounds, which is the sort of the maximum number of score groups you're going to get. And with 500 players, that means that there's going to be an average of 25 to 30 players in each score group. And in fact, in the middle score groups, there'll be even more because there's fewer players that are in the extreme score groups, like really low or really high. So it could be easily 50 or 60 players in each score group. And then when they do the pairings, they rank all those players top to bottom, and they pair the upper half against the lower half. And so you might think that players of a similar rating would all end up in the same score group. But of course, there's going to be weaker players, lower rated players that are having a good tournament, and higher rated players that are having a bad tournament. So within each score group, there's a whole range of ratings. And so each time for the pairings, you're going to be thrown into a large score group with a wide range of ratings, and you're going to either be in the upper half and paired down against a lower rated player, or you're going to be in the lower half and paired up against a higher rated player. So that's what happens in these large opens. You're either paired up or paired down. So there's going to continue to be these kind of rating disparities in the games, which I think makes it interesting as a change of pace. I wouldn't want to do it all the time, but you do get these opportunities to play against higher rated players you might not normally play against ordinarily, and also you get these breaks in between where you face lower rated players, and hopefully you can beat them. Although it is dangerous. I lost to a lower-rated player in, the 2012 U.S. Open in round 2, and so I was in a fairly low score group from that point on, and I had to work my way up. I ended up with the same overall score of 4.5 points out of 9 in that tournament, but ended up losing rating points because I kind of worked my way up to 4.5 by winning against lower-rated players, so it didn't really help my rating any. Anyway, in this tournament, I'm doing pretty well. I'm staying right where I should be, and I'm once again facing a higher rated player. So 21-24, he starts off with knight f3, playing knight f6, and he goes c4. So we've gone into an English opening. I play my usual line against the English, c5, g3, and the early d5. So he took, I took back, and he played bishop g2. And now I continue with knight c6, he castles. So I had been expecting him to play either d6 or knight c6 on one of these at one of these points. And in fact, I think knight c6 is one of the key moves here, putting more pressure on my pawn. But it's interesting, he avoids that move and plays this in a different fashion. And what we've got here is actually an accelerated dragon with colors reversed. And the main move for black here is to continue on with e5 and set up a Maroczy bind, again with the colors reversed. So that would be the most interesting way to play. And it's all because he hasn't put any pressure on the knight that I can get in the move e5. Normally I'm playing the move e6 to defend the knight. I tried something different. I just tried going for a symmetrical fianchetto. This isn't too bad, but But white has a good move here, and he finds it. This is actually the top choice of the engine and the database is to play d4 immediately in this position. Since I haven't played e5, I haven't in any way clamped down on this d4 move, he can get that in. And just as in the Sicilian dragon, if you can get in this move d4 in one go, you've accomplished something. So white's doing pretty well here, but not winning. It's just an advantage to white. I take, he takes, and I go bishop g7. So continuing development, and now he grabs on c6. So I had calculated this, that I could take back with a pawn, and I continue to adequately defend my knight in the center. And I have this good knight here. I do have some defects, though. This exchange has now created a weakness in my position, this isolated c-pawn. But in compensation, there's open lines for my bishops, and I also have a lot of pressure along this dark square diagonal. So it's not all one-sided. Actually, black is doing pretty well here, although white still has the opening advantage. He goes queen c2 here. I think at some point the chess engine wants him to play e5 and kick the knight away, but he goes with a different strategy of queen c2, going after my loose pawn here. I defend with queen b6, and now he goes knight d2. So he's avoided this knight c3 move, not challenging the knight directly, but indirectly he's going to undermine my position over here with the move knight to c4. I decide to castle before things get too hot in the center, and now he goes knight c4. And at this point, I had to really think pretty deeply. I mean, the most natural move here for me was queen to c7, but I wasn't sure I liked it. The problem is the queen on c7 is sort of loose. I mean, it's defended by the knight, but the knight can be taken, and then there's this potential pin along this file. So, for example, if I played queen c7, the thing is he can't immediately exploit it because the knight hops into these squares. Well, it's not obvious how he might exploit it because those moves are all covered by the queen, so those are not not happening. I was a little bit worried about this move, but this turns out to be okay, only because of my bishop here, actually. If we follow this sequence out, he can take my knight, and I mean, he's challenging my knight and just threatening to win a pawn here and take advantage of this pin. So I have to take his knight, rather. And then he can take back with the bishop, developing a piece. And now this is under fire, and it can't be moved because of this pin. So there's all this crossfire of pins. This is the kind of stuff I was worried about. But, well, if I attack the queen here and force the action, he takes, I take, he takes. Then in the end, I move my rook away with a tempo on the bishop. He defends, and I grab this pawn over here, and we get to a position that's dead even. So, in fact, this queen c7 move was playable in this position. I could have played queen c7, but I didn't calculate that all the way through, and I didn't particularly like the idea of walking into all those pins. So I saw some of those ideas, but not all of them. So I played the move queen a6, and actually this turns out to be a good move. It's putting a little pressure on the knight here, and it introduces some tactical ideas into the position. And it's actually the top-rated choice of the engine, so I was proud of myself for finding that move after a long think. So he develops with the bishop d2, and I play bishop e6. And now my pieces are starting to come together as this coordinated potential attack on the knight there. He defends. He has to do something because there's maybe discovered attacks with my knight here. So he brings another piece over. Oh, he uses the f-rook. Brings his f-rook over to defend the knight. I play rook to b8. So now my rook and my bishop are coordinating on the b2 square there. He plays a3. And now right here, the chess engine is suggesting I should play the move c5. I've basically following a strategy of just clearing everything off of this diagonal so that this bishop is not so much of a threat. And this is a point at which I can play c5 where my knight is adequately defended. So that's the recommendation of the chess engine. And it has a secondary idea with c5 of clamping down on a future b4. Now I'm not worried about b4 in this position right away because it's pinned against the rook. The b pawn is not moving at the moment, but it becomes an idea later, and so just preempting that with the move c5 is a good idea. Okay, I didn't spot that idea. I just brought my f rook over. I was bringing both my rooks into the game, placing it opposite his queen, and he plays bishop to f1. And at this position, actually, I'd spotted a tactic move earlier, and it didn't quite work because of his bishop on g2, bearing down on this diagonal. But now that he's moved it off of this diagonal, I have a tactic that I can play here. The only problem is it's not the best move in the position. But just if you want to pause the video, see if you can figure out what tactic I was thinking about. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. I played the surprising move, knight to c3. You can just place this knight here where it is attacked by 4 different pieces. It's kind of funny. But of course, his knight is under attack. And however he takes my knight, then I'm going to be able to grab his knight because he doesn't want to take with the queen, because my bishop is protecting the knight. So queen takes would just lose material. So that means he's actually limited to taking with either the pawn or the bishop, and in both cases I can grab his knight. So let's back up. What was I thinking in playing this move? I was feeling uncomfortable about the pressure on this c-pawn, and I was just trying to resolve the tension here a little bit and try and escape what felt like a difficult situation to me. But there are the engine thinks this position is still pretty much equal, and it gives a couple of ways to continue: either c5, as I mentioned before, or knight to b6 here, challenging his knight that way and provoking a trade. The interesting thing is that after knight b6, I was a little bit worried about this kind of sequence, but I can take back with the rook, and once again these threats against his b2 pawn compensate for the attack on my c pawn, and this is going to be okay for me. I was thinking I had to take back with the pawn there, I guess. So anyway, I didn't really consider knight b6 or c5. Not entirely sure why, but I saw this tactic and I spent most of my time calculating to see if it worked. And the tactic works, but unfortunately it leaves me in a worse position, whereas those other moves would leave me about even. So he took with the bishop here, the most active way to take. And one line I had to calculate, by the way. He could just move his knight out of trouble and leave my knight hanging. But I calculated this line. If he goes to e3, then I can take on e2 a check and fork of the king and the rook. Although I have to worry because my knight at the moment is pinned. But after his king moves, say to maintain that, to maintain the pin, my knight is still defended, and I have this rook b2 move here, so I can come in with that. I actually hadn't found that. I was hoping to find something here over the board, but I had recognized that my rook is defended, and I was expecting him to. I mean, my knight is defended by the queen, so I was hoping to find something here, maybe an escape like this. The chess engine thinks actually the line should continue. Bishop takes, and then queen takes, and then play from here with probably an even position. But I thought this was interesting. I've actually gained a pawn here, but my pawn is weak. So maybe black has some slight edge. I still have this pressure here. So that would be good for me. That's right. So his best reply here is what he did, which is to take the knight. And so I take his knight. And now he just goes in for wholesale liquidation. I wasn't sure he would do this, but he's going for the endgame. And in the endgame, these weaknesses are going to be a problem. And we'll see about that b4 move shortly. So he takes the bishop. Let's see, I took on c4. Yeah, he takes the bishop. I take the queen off. I have to do something about that before I can take his bishop back. He takes. I take. And then he plays b4. And now, since I've never gotten in this move c5, this pawn is now permanently kept back here. And my king is a little bit far away. But actually, it's just close enough to hold on to things. So this is not yet a lost position. This is just a slight edge for white into the endgame. So maybe instructive to see how the higher-rated player tries to nurse this advantage and convert it. So my immediate concern is trying to organize my pieces so that I can defend this pawn and stop his pawns from coming forward. So I play bishop to b3, move with tempo, hitting his rook. He hits my bishop, and I go to a4. That's the idea. So the bishop over here can defend and also can hold back these pawns, keep them from advancing. He goes rook to c5, and now he's just going to pile up on this pawn and try to simplify things a little bit with rook b5, and he just defends. So I trade, and we're down to a single rook. Drop my bishop back here. Single rook and a single bishop. And now he played another move that kind of surprised me. I thought these simplifications were helping me a little bit, but he played e3 and allowed a further simplification. We just get into a pure rook and pawn endgame with an even number of pawns. And now he may have been thinking about pushing this pawn forward. But actually he played king f6 here. Oh no, it's my turn. That's right, I play king f6 here. And I'm just in time to get over and defend against the pawn push. So he played king e2, but if he had tried pushing the pawn, this is kind of an interesting sequence. I can bring my king one step closer, and if he takes, I can win the pawn back with king d6. But that's not so clear. I mean, this is king d6, rook a5. I get this pawn, but then I lose this pawn. Rook to c7, trying to defend, rook here. Holding on to this again. And yeah, it's a bit tricky. He's managing to keep an extra pawn there. So, but there is a way to hold, to get that pawn because of the proximity of my king and my rook. That's sort of what I'm counting on, is my pieces are closer to this pawn than his king over here. I play a6. And now this trick that he had of bringing the rook to the a file doesn't work. I'm just threatening to come over here and win the pawn. If he pushes forward, I go king d7. He can go over here and attack this pawn. But I have time to play rook a8 to defend it. Now he can bring the king in, but I can grab here. And this is all even. This is the kind of endgame I think I could hold. So he doesn't go for that. He leaves my king on f6 and starts bringing his king over. So I bring my king over. Kings come up, and I get all the way to d6. So now this pawn is pretty well secured, and I can actually move my rook away. So he goes rook a5, attacking my other rook. And so up to this point, I would say this is an endgame that I'm worse, but I'm holding. And in the next couple moves, I make a few small inaccuracies, and then suddenly white is winning this endgame. So the first one is rook c7. That's the move I played here. It's kind of a natural move. I'm defending the a-pawn from the side, this from the front, and you always want your pieces to be active in the endgame, particularly rooks. And I know it's in kind of a passive role here, defending, but I have ideas maybe of pushing this pawn forward if given the chance. Unfortunately, I don't give the chance. I don't get the chance because this king is immediately coming to the c4 square and stopping me from pushing that pawn. So that's why rook c7 actually does not help, and it's better in this particular case to move the rook to a8 and introduce the idea of maybe pushing my pawn to a6 at some moment. Notice that his rook has very few squares. If I were to push this pawn to f6, it would take away all of these squares from the rook, and the king, and he has this square. The pawn is guarding these two squares. So let's get rid of this arrow. But his rook only has this square. Anyway, yeah, his rook is running short on squares, and if I can push this pawn forward, it may be a way to hold the game. Anyway, rook c7 is what I played. He went in with king c4, and now a very counterintuitive move is suggested by the engine. First of all, what I played was just rook to b7. I decided just to sit on the position. I didn't see any active ideas here, and I didn't want his king coming into c4. Seems pretty logical to try and prevent that. Further advance the king, putting it into this ideal position. But what the chess engine is recommending is a very funny move, king d7. And if he comes forward to c5, which is what I was expecting, my king can maneuver over here to king c8, say rook a6, attacking the pawn. I have time to come over here, king b7, and I'm just holding on to everything. And this is actually a better square for my king, holding on to both of those pawns. And now my rook is free. If ever this rook releases the pressure from the c-pawn, my rook will be free to join in and get some counterplay. And also, his rook is now run out of squares. It can only maneuver up and down. It can't go side to side. So an interesting position and one that I could hold. Let's see, after king d7, after I move king to d7, instead of moving his king forward to c5, actually the chess engine says his best move is g4, trying to cramp my pawns, and I can still do this maneuver, king c8, g5, trying to gain space over here, and rook to d7, rook e5, activating his rook, and my king up to c7. So rearranging my pieces like this is the idea the chess engine has to hold the position. So in this position, I didn't think of that idea, like king d7, a very funny idea. Another kind of counterintuitive move, really. I just played rook b7, trying to hold the position, and now it starts to go downhill on me. He pushes out with e4. He's just going to start gaining some space over here and running me out of moves, basically. I play f6, holding off. I didn't want this check driving my king away. Now he pushes on with a4. Play rook c7, just sitting on the position. He goes rook a6. And now there's a threat here of him pushing forward with the b-pawn, taking advantage of this pin. So at this point, I am finally forced to drop back to get away from that, to get out of that pin. The chess engine is suggesting a counterattacking strategy with king e5, but that also leaves me in a worse position. So it seems like no matter what I do, my game is going downhill. I play king d7. Now he comes forward with king c5. Go rook b7 with the idea that if he grabs my pawn, I can grab his pawn, taking advantage of the fact that his king is defending his rook as well as attacking the pawn. So he just sits on this position for a while. He plays f4, getting a little more space. And I play h5 here. Maybe a little bit of a mistake. Rook c7 could have been played here to attempt to try and just hold the position, but still probably winning for black. Let's see. He pushed on with e5. Oh, I'm sorry. I played h5. He pushed on with e5. And now he's taking more squares away from my king and making it more difficult to defend this. I play rook c7, and he plays e6 check. This is something I had expected, and I had calculated a sequence incorrectly here. So it's getting near the end of the game, and this is the first real miscalculation I made in the game. So I agree that I actually played a pretty good game here. Those are kind of minor mistakes that I made. But this one was a big miscalculation, probably getting low on time near the end of the game. But I thought after e6 I could take it, and then my idea was to run over here to f5 and start advancing my e-pawn. And I was calculating after the rook trade. So here, let's see if I can explain that more clearly. Let's erase these arrows. So the idea is, so he brings a pawn forward, check, puts my king here, and then he can take here with check and force an exchange of rooks, and then try and win with these pawns. So from that position, with my king here and his king here, I calculated the sequence where I run my king over here and push the e-pawn forward and queen, and I calculated the sequence where he uses his king to help these pawns promote, and my pawn actually promotes first in that line. So if you want to think about it, you could pause the video here and see what my mistake was in this line of thought. Because I had to think of this before I decided it was safe to play rook c7. But that was what I concluded, that it was safe. And then he, okay, you can pause the video now. I'm going to give the answer away. he pushed on with e6 anyway. Check. I take. He takes. Check. I take. He takes. I run over here to f5, and now he doesn't run with his king, or he doesn't push his pawns or run with his king in this direction. He runs with his king in this direction, and this is the problem. The problem is these pawns promote by themselves. They don't need the king's help to promote, and my pawns don't promote by themselves, so his king can stop them. And well, my pawns might promote by themselves, but his king is in position to stop them. So I continued to struggle here. I push on with g5. He takes. I take. And then he pushes on with b5. I try to create some space here for my pawns to come through, but he just keeps pushing. I take. He takes. And then he advances again. Isn't that right? Oh, he played king to... oh, I played king to g4 here. That's right. I was going to win this pawn and then advance one of these two pawns. Let's see. Yeah, it was already too slow to advance this other pawn, I guess. Well, everything is too slow at this point. He advances. I take. He takes. I took. He advances. And then I resign. So obviously my pawns are way too far behind. And he's just going to win this game. So anyway, a pretty interesting and instructive game, I thought. And as I said, he complimented me after the game for my play. So I felt pretty good about it. Let's go ahead and look at the next round game. Let's see. I had the white pieces in this one. I kicked off with e4. So this is round 6. I'm facing a lower rated player. Once again, 200 points difference. He's rated 1594. He plays another Sicilian. And he plays the hyper-accelerated dragon with the early g6. So I decided to go for a Maroczy bind setup, which is a type of position I'm trying to learn. He goes knight c6, and I push my pawn. And then he played d6 here. Bishop to g7 is actually the main line, but it's probably okay as well. d6, knight c3, knight f6. In fact, actually, I think we transpose back into the main line because he's going to play bishop g7 in a move or two. So we'll get back to a main line position. Bishop e2, knight takes d4. I was a little bit surprised by this, but I looked it up later, and that's the main way of playing bishop g7. So often, one of the ideas in this Maroczy bind is to take advantage of the extra space. And to do that, you want to avoid trades. So black is going for that trade while he has the chance. Sometimes, and I guess in this position, you could consider retreating this knight back to c2 to avoid the trades. I think Chess Explained likes to play that way, although I don't know if it's in this exact position. But anyway, the way I played bishop e2, this is perfectly normal. Bishop g7, and I castle. Right here, castling is a bit unusual. Turns out completing development is a standard way of playing with bishop to e3. And we'll see why that might be useful in a moment. So I castle, and he castles. And, I want to get my queen out of, now that this bishop is supported. Previously, there weren't any great discoveries by the knight because the bishop was hanging, and in most cases I could just take the bishop. And now the bishop is defended by the king. I have to start worrying about these knight discoveries, and so I want to move my queen away. And if the bishop had already been developed, then I could have just dropped the queen back to d2, and that would have been a good square for it. So that's why castling when I did maybe was not precise. So now I drop my queen all the way back to d1. It's not a bad move. I just want to get the queen out of the way of the bishops. Although I think queen e3 was the top choice on the opening database, but queen d1 is not bad, but maybe a little bit of a waste of time. If I had developed my bishop to e3 first, I could have put the queen on d2, which would have been more active. Anyway, he continues with bishop e6, hitting my pawn. I move the rook. I'm just getting my pieces off of this diagonal and preparing to move these, move the pawn forward. He goes rook c8, more pressure on the pawn. I go b3, defending. He goes a6, I go bishop b2, so everything is secure. I had to worry for a little bit that there was some tactic against the loose knight. It was loose for one move right here, but I think there was nothing great. This discovered attack doesn't work because the knight can take back, and I've already gotten the rook off of that diagonal. That's the point of moving the rook to b1. Get out of tactics like that. Okay, so he just went a6, and went bishop b2, and now finally things are defended. He went knight d7. Interesting move. He's looking at both of these squares with the knight. It's going to choose an active one, I guess. I go into knight d5, very typical move in the Maroczy, get this knight up to a good square and encourage him to trade it off. He goes knight e5, good square for his knight. I go king h1 so I can prepare this f4 move rather. And up until this point, I would say the game has been pretty even. And Black plays a bad move here. He plays the move f5. Not that it fails tactically or anything, but it weakens his king side. And definitely, when I looked at this with the chess engine, the evaluation suddenly shifts into White's favor after this move. The funny thing is, we were discussing this position after the game, and he thought f5 was a good move, even after the game. And I was trying to say to him that no, f5 was when his game started going downhill. It's just a little premature to be opening things up, and it works out to my advantage. This diagonal here is it's a double-edged sword, but if I can trade off his dark squared bishop, I'm getting rid of one of his key defenders on his king. So anyway, also I guess because of the immediate tactical sequence here, there is somewhat of a tactical response here, because I play f4 immediately, kicking his knight. Knight drops back to d7, and then I take off the bishops. So that's the point, is I can get those bishops off with tempo, and I can bring my queen to a good square, also with tempo. King goes back to g8. So that f5 move, you see, led directly to this pretty much forced sequence where suddenly I'm much better. I have more space in the center, and so that's kind of the turning point in the game. Not that it's winning at this point, but it certainly gives me the confidence to play. Let's see. He played king g8. I brought my rook. The rook is not doing anything on b1 anymore. I bring it to the center. He takes on e4. I take with the queen. Goes knight c5, kicking my queen. And I drop back to e3. And he decides to take the knight off at this point. Bishop takes. And I decide to take with the rook. The chess engine says I could take with the pawn. I mean, the idea of taking with the pawn is the kind of positional idea of keeping this e-pawn backwards and getting pressure on it. But, well, I like having active pieces here, and this is a good move here. He goes rook c7, defending. Actually, the chess engine suggests that Black's best defense here would be to play the move e6 here, kicking my rook away. But that does leave a permanent weakness on d6, so I'd still be happy playing against that position. I think still with an edge. But he defends with the rook c7. And I double my rooks on the d file, and he was kind of curious why I did this after the game. It seems like these rooks are biting on granite, as it were. But the pressure on this d-pawn keeps this e-pawn permanently backwards. So the target of this pile-up here is really this backwards pawn, which I'm maintaining as a target. And at some point I may even be able to penetrate with my queen here after chasing the knight away. So at this point I'm feeling pretty good about my game, and I've played reasonably well so far. What follows, although, is kind of a comedy of errors the next couple of moves. He plays queen to d7. And what he needed to play, by the way, he needed to play a move like queen to c8 to get out of this. So queen to d7. If you want to take a second to spot the tactic, this is a real easy one. I can just take the knight here. His queen is in the glare of this rook here, so he can't take back with the pawn. He can only take back with the rook. So, for example, rook takes, queen takes, and now his queen on this particular square is completely undefended. So pawn takes, rook takes, just wins a piece. I'm up a bishop. So anyway, I didn't spot that. For some reason, I might have thought about it, and for some reason didn't think it worked. It wouldn't have worked if his queen were still on this d8 square where it's defended, because at the end the trade is a queen for a rook, and then he trades a queen for a rook, so it comes out even. But with the queen on the d7 square, it's definitely a tactic in the position. So I overlook the tactic, and instead of playing a good move, I play a bad move. So it was a kind of a comedy of errors. But I was thinking about how to take advantage of this position. I've got kind of a hold on things here, and I'm trying to find a way to maybe push forward on the king side. And I want to really get my bishop to this square. So I was playing queen g3, trying to exploit these light squares. So I played the move queen g3 with that in mind. And he just played the move knight c4, kicking knight to e4, kicking my queen. So that's why this move queen g3 was doubly bad. It was bad because I didn't play the tactic that was there begging to be played, and it's bad because there was a simple refutation of it. The queen has no good squares, and I actually just went back to e3, and he went back to c5. And once again, I don't play the tactic, but I try something different. So that was a little bit of a comedy of errors there. Okay, I play bishop to f3, trying to activate the bishop in a different way. He goes queen to e8. I go bishop to g4 now. This is where I wanted all along because his queen was guarding that diagonal. And now he plays the move rook to f6. Just bringing more defense to this d6 point. And this move is a blunder. And I do spot the tactic this time. And so if you want to take a second, see if you can figure out what I played here. Okay, the key is that his rook, leaving the back rank, has left the queen undefended. So now this d pawn can just be taken. And let's see, he took, I took, and then he just has to move the queen out of the way. He can't take back. So he went queen f8. And then I just dropped my rook back to d1. So if we pause, I just wanted to talk about that error for a while. The funny thing is, I was playing this in kind of a positional fashion. That's with the Maraxi bind. That's often what you do. So it's easy to get lulled into this kind of way of thinking where you're not spotting all of the tactics. But that's what you have to do. Even if you're playing in a positional style, you have to at least be aware of the tactics and be ready to exploit them. And so I finally was able to find and exploit a tactic there, and that's the end result of many types of positional play, as you develop a superior position, but you need to break through with some tactics at some point or another. So that's why, even though you may be thinking positionally all the time, you want to try and keep your tactical sensors on. Something I have difficulty doing. Okay, so let's see. But now I'm just winning in this game, so we can go through the rest of it kind of quick. Let's see, goes queen f6, I go bishop f3, goes queen to b2. He's penetrating with his queen over here. I'm happy to offer the trade and go into an endgame where not only am I a pawn up, but I have a bishop versus a knight and a better structure. So that's clearly a winning endgame. He goes king f7, start bringing my king in. Knight to e6. Trying to activate his knight, hitting my pawn. I defend. Goes b5. If he can trade off enough pawns, he may have hopes of drawing this endgame, but I want to keep my pawns together, and I want to I don't mind one or two trades. So I defend with the bishop, so if he takes, I can take back with the bishop. He played king f6 to unpin his knight. I played king f2. I don't want to trade anymore. I want to keep the advantage of the bishop versus the knight in an endgame with pawns on both sides of the board. So I'm not interested in that trade. Just want to get my king into the game. He takes, I take. He goes knight c5. King e3. Coming forward, he tries to undermine some more with the a-pawn. I go rook to d8, trying to activate my rook. He goes a4. I'm not too worried about this. In fact, I start to see some mating ideas here. I play g4. He plays a takes b3, and I play g5 check. So my opponent plays the losing move here. I thought every move was losing, but there were ways to continue. But the game went this way. He played king g7 here, and that's checkmate. So that's how the game ended. Now, I thought if he went here, there would also be a mate. So king f5. My plan was to play king f3, cutting off this escape square so his king would be in a mating net again. Now I'm threatening rook here, mating the king, and if he plays knight to here to cover that square and prevent me from mating in this direction, then there was also a mate in this direction, which was nice. So let's see, if he played some other move, yeah, rook here is check. Rook check here is mate as well. Yeah, everything's guarded. So, but it turns out the chess engine points out there is one saving defense here. It could have played the move knight to d7, not knight to e6, but knight to d7, also with the idea of covering this square and blocking my rook from getting to this square. And so it's not an immediate mate at this point, but I can take back. At least I have time to grab this pawn. And I can play on from this position. It's still pretty easily winning. I have the bishop versus the knight. I have the outside pass pawn, so winning in a number of ways, but it wouldn't have been as quick as the game, or as what I thought. I thought actually he was getting mated in any case, but anyway, yeah, in this position he went king to g7, and the game finished like that. So anyway, a nice game, except for that comedic sequence in the middle. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will be back soon with another couple games. See you then. Bye.